Welcome to the College Investor Audio Show, where we talk about the biggest issues impacting millennial money, from student loan debt to side hustles to building wealth. We will show you how to get out of debt so that you can build real wealth for the future.
Hello and welcome. So glad you're here today as we talk about student loans again, but specifically, if the payment pause and interest waiver will be extended again. Let's get right to it. So, the CARES Act, which was enacted on March 27, 2020, included a payment pause and interest waiver for federal student loans held by the U.S. Department of Education. We know this. The payment pause and interest waiver was originally set to expire on September 30th, 2020. But it's been extended 5 times. Twice during the Trump administration, 3 times during the Biden administration. So when the current extension expires, May 1st, 2022, student loan payments will have been suspended for a total of 26 months at a cost of more than $125 billion in waived interest. Will the payment pause and interest waiver be extended again? For a 6th time? First of all, the payment pause and interest waiver effectively puts eligible federal student loans into hibernation, so to speak, ensuring that borrowers are no worse off than they were prior to the pandemic. The legal authority for the payment pause and interest waiver depends on the HEROES Act of 2003, which allows a limited waiver or modification of federal student aid rules in connection with a national emergency. The COVID-19 pandemic was declared a national emergency by President Trump under the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act, on March 13, 2020. So long as this declaration remains in effect, the U.S. Secretary of Education can continue to extend the payment pause and interest waiver. The authority for the limited PSLF waiver, which was announced on October 6, 2021, also depends on the HEROES Act of 2003. The October 31st, 2022 deadline for using the limited PSLF waiver is an indication that the Biden administration believes that the presidential national emergency declaration will continue at least through that date. This kind of seems like the Biden administration could choose to extend the payment pause and interest waiver through October 31st, 2022. The big question is whether President Biden will choose to implement a 6th extension of the payment pause and interest waiver, or whether he'll allow just repayment to start again on May 1st, 2022, as is currently scheduled. Borrowers believe President Biden will extend the payment pause and interest waiver again. This is according to a CNBC student loan survey conducted in January 2022. 29% of borrowers believe repayment are going to resume on May 1st. 26% believe the president will extend the payment pause again. 28% believe some student loans will be forgiven. 14% believe that all student loans will be forgiven. All of them. More than 2/3 of survey respondents want Biden to forgive some or all student loans, with 34% supporting forgiveness of all student loans and 35% supporting targeted forgiveness only to borrowers based on need. Like a quarter of them do not want President Biden to forgive any student loans. That's interesting. There's a sharp divide according to political affiliation, with only 19% of Republicans supporting forgiveness of all loans, compared with 43% of independents and 46% of Democrats. There are also divisions based on demographics, too. So more women than men support student loan forgiveness. Black and Hispanic survey respondents are more likely to support student loan forgiveness than white and Asian respondents. Younger respondents are more likely to support student loan forgiveness, 45% of Gen Z, 43% of millennials versus 32% of Gen X and 23% of boomers. That's kind of to be expected. Low-income respondents earning less than $50,000 are more likely to support student loan forgiveness than middle-income respondents earning $50,000 to $99,999, or high-income respondents earning $100,000 or more. Borrowers who owe more student loan debt surprise, surprise, are more likely to support student loan forgiveness than borrowers who owe less. It's kind of a given, right? So let's take a look at the most recent extension to the payment pause and interest waiver and how it was driven more by politics than by policy. Very interesting. So the previous extension through January 31st, 2022 was identified as the final extension because the student loan and employment situation was expected to reach pre-pandemic norms by the end of 2021. Since then, unemployment rates have normalized. The unemployment rate in January 2022 at 4.0% is the same as it was in January 2019, of course, before the pandemic. Deferment, forbearance, delinquency, default rates are also at least as good now as they were before the pandemic for loans that are not eligible for the payment pause and interest waiver. But some policymakers were vocal about insisting on a further extension. Fear of the Omicron variant of the COVID-19 virus, which has since subsided, also helped justify the additional extension. There will always be a risk of another variant of concern. Some Democrats have called for another extension of the payment pause and interest waiver through 2023. On the other hand, some Republicans have been critical of the most recent extension. Representative Virginia Fox, she's a Republican from North Carolina, who will chair the House Committee on Education and Labor if Republicans take back control of the U.S. House, said, President Biden's latest extension is a troubling trend toward blanket student loan forgiveness, which would be a massive mistake with major consequences for borrowers and taxpayers. Some Democrats feel that President Biden should continue to extend the payment pause and interest waiver until the Congress can implement broad student loan forgiveness. The president cannot implement broad student loan forgiveness on his own, through executive action, by the way. Only Congress has the power of the purse. If the president were to issue such an executive order, it would face a court challenge and ultimately fail. But put borrowers in an uncertain limbo state for like months. So, broad student loan forgiveness is unlikely to be enacted until the Build Back Better Act is passed in some form or just completely abandoned, as student loan forgiveness is controversial enough to potentially derail the Build Back Better Act legislation. Even some Democrats are balking at the high cost of broad student loan forgiveness and prefer just a lower-cost, targeted loan forgiveness. The path forward may depend on a political calculation concerning the impact on the midterm elections. So yeah, all things are back to normal now. Here's the question, though, that we should ask. What should borrowers do? Interest rates have started increasing, so borrowers may be eager to refinance federal loans into private student loans to take advantage of current low interest rates. But this is risky because refinancing federal loans into private student loans will lose all of the superior benefits of federal loans, including the payment pause and interest waiver, of course, and possible loan forgiveness down the road. There is no answer yet on whether there'll be any broad student loan forgiveness. Broad student loan forgiveness may be limited to federal student loans held by the U.S. Department of Education, just like the payment pause and interest waiver. It would be unfortunate if you refinance your student loans into private loans, only to later learn that you could have qualified for loan forgiveness. All right, so there's time to wait and see what happens with broad student loan forgiveness. Interest rates aren't going to increase by too much through the end of the year. Moreover, the payment pause and interest waiver provides federal loans with a temporary 0% interest rate. So that's better than the lowest interest rates available on a private student loan. Borrowers can use the money saved from suspended loan payments to build or bulk up an emergency fund or to pay down that higher interest debt. This could be a great tool for you to use to better yourself for the future, to lay a really strong foundation right now. If borrowers continue to make payments on their federal loans, the payment goes entirely to principal. That's huge. But borrowers who expect to qualify for loan forgiveness, such as public service loan forgiveness or the forgiveness at the end of an income-driven repayment plan, shouldn't really make extra payments on their loans, as they're just going to reduce the amount of forgiveness they eventually receive. Now, Borrowers can also save the money to provide a cushion for the restart of repayment to kind of ease into it. You should also create a descriptive budget by tracking your spending every month, assigning each expense to a broad category like food, entertainment, transportation, housing, and medical care. Just get into those habits and form them now. You should also tag each expense as mandatory, like a need, or discretionary, a want. Total up the categories and tags at the end of the month. This will help you understand how you're spending your money and where you might be able to cut back to make room for the student loan payments. We should be doing this every month anyway. Borrowers who will still be struggling with their student loans should contact their loan servicer to explore options for financial relief. Deferments and forbearances can continue to suspend the repayment obligation. Extended repayment and income-driven repayment can reduce the monthly loan payment, making it more affordable. And that is our show for today. If you want to find out more about all the different options for student loan repayment, you can always check them out at thecollegeinvestor.com. We have tons of resources there. Just type in student loans, or you can type in the title of this podcast right into the search bar, and there will be links to other resources and articles as well. It's again at thecollegeinvestor.com. Thanks again for stopping by today, and we'll talk to you again real soon.